Welcome, everybody, to a discussion as part of the Illumination Project of the Springfield History Museum. I am the story collector for this year, Thomas Hura, and this project is co-led by our consultant, Amy Yogi, and our photographer, Mimi Noyedo. Right now, I'm happy to be chatting with a community leader here in Springfield. This is Ricky Poon, a retired pastor with this wonderful Eugene Springfield Chinese Christian Church. How are you doing today, Mr. Poon?
Good. Thank you, Tom, for having me.
Thank you. And thanks for being willing to sit, close and just it makes a nice shot. It's going to be, people are going to be watching this for generations to come to hear your wisdom. And so it's just great to be connected with you. And so can you tell me about the origins of your involvement with the church?
Wow. Where should I begin?
Probably with origins.
Yeah, right. Well, just quickly, because I was born in Guangzhou, China, in southern China. And then
Nice.
When I was 7 years old, my family immigrated to Hong Kong. This is back in 1953.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we were there from 53 to 59. And then my father, who had worked as an interpreter during the Korean War for the American military on Okinawa, because he could speak Japanese, Chinese, and English. And because of his involvement there, he was able to find sponsors for our family, for his family to come to the United States under a refugee status. So we were outside of the regular quota.
Wow.
And because our sponsors, were in Seattle, that's where we ended up. I had no idea where Seattle was and
Oh, wow.
why we were there. But
You're like, is it by Texas? Florida?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Seattle as a teenager, went to college, and then I started working as an engineer after I graduated in Portland, Oregon for Bonneville Power Administration.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So is it electrical engineering?
Electrical power engineering.
Wow.
And then
if the lights shut off, he's going to be the one who has to fix it. So we'll hope it doesn't happen.
Right. So
amazing.
Yeah. So I was there in Portland. That's where both our daughter and our son were born. And then in the mid 1990s or early 1990s, we decided, my wife and I, to give our children a different experience. And so I found, got a job as district engineer in Idaho Falls.
Wow.
Which, by the way, is about the size of Springfield.
I can imagine.
Yeah, 50,000 people
Okay.
in an area with very few Asians. But there were some, because there was the Idaho National Engineering Laboratory there.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where they train the sailors to operate nuclear submarines.
Wow.
So it's called the Desert Navy. But
Before we started rolling, we were talking about University of Oregon and Chinese population, and I think of it as being in some ways a gateway to that community, and it sounds like in Idaho Falls that laboratory was a small gateway of some Chinese presence in that community.
Yeah, but we enjoyed the 5 years. We were in Idaho. The son and daughter were in their, I guess, teenage years. But it was just too far from the ocean. It was a little bit cold in the wintertime. You get about 4 feet of snow, good snow, powder snow. But when there was an opportunity to come back on the West Coast, I could have picked, anywhere, that our agency, Bonneville Power, operates in. But having lived in Idaho Falls, we want to come back to maybe not a big city like Portland or Seattle. And we also enjoy being around young people. So, Eugene, Springfield with the University of Oregon.
Yeah.
Not too far from the ocean, not too far from the mountains and Portland, So it seemed like an ideal place to relocate the family. And that was 1990, I think, 94 or 5, thereabouts. And that's when we moved into this area.
Did your connection with electrical engineering and the Bonneville Power, I don't remember the third word. Administration.
BPA for short.
I'm very professional in this history museum project, aren't I?
Okay. You're doing fine.
Was that a connection that led you into Springfield, or did it happen that you moved to Springfield and you became connected with the Springfield Utility Board in some ways?
This is so amazing. I had no idea what Springfield was like. And as you know, Springfield is very much different than Eugene. But when we came, I realized, well, there's a smaller town, across the freeway from Eugene, and it's Springfield. And because of my background in engineering, not so much in sales or marketing, they decided I would be a good fit. My company agency, good fit for the smaller municipals and co-ops in the area.
Yeah.
Because, I'm kind of more of even though I grew up in big cities, I'm kind of a down-home person.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And
corner market, see the person you know.
Yeah, so instead of eWeb, I got the better end of the deal. I got sub as one of my dozen or so customers.
Yes.
The rest of them are co-ops, along the Oregon coast. So sub was really my, other than Monmouth, my main municipal utility customer. And so coming here in the mid '90s, and that was in the reason from engineering, I took the job of account executive was because at that time there was a deregulation, of the utility industry. So they separated what we do into two businesses, the power side and the transmission side. So I was an engineer who worked on the power side, the deregulated part of the operation, because the transmission side is still, you have to have control, because if you control the transmission, you control who gets what. Right?
Yes,
and at what cost?
The levers, the switches.
But because of my engineering expertise, experience, they said, well, we could use you in the power business. And so and those were the only 3 years that I did not really do engineering, as my main job. And I could tell you that was the toughest 3 years of my career.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because it's different, right? Being in power sales is different than designing and building transmission lines. But because of that,
are you telling me that you're an Asian American who loves working? Is that true?
No.
Is that what I heard?
Well, I love working on something that I'm passionate about. Right? Let's put it that way.
Yes, of course.
But,
and I'm sure it's fulfilling to make literal connections happen that empower people's ability to use power.
Yeah, but I tell you, Tom, it's because of that experience, having sub as my customer. So I got to know Steve Loveland, who was the wonderful person, general manager at the time. And after he retired, Bob Linehan. And after he retired, I got to know Jeff Nelson a little bit. When I came, he was just a beginning, engineer in the sub, organization. But all through that, I just felt, people in Springfield, there's something about, I don't know if you call it honesty or integrity, just these. I don't know if it's a small town attitude, but very friendly. So I really enjoy those years, even those, and that's, how I got to know Springfield a little bit, because I come here for meetings all the time. I mean, of course, there's one year that there was a kind of a power crunch, and sub decided to install like a dozen or so emergency generators. So I was involved in helping them with that. So all of that, just even though I live in Eugene, there's a connection, with
Yeah.
Springfield all of that time,
And we will
Yeah.
certainly get into, with the church that we're sitting in, having a history of existing in both of the towns.
Yeah,
At some
yeah.
point, currently is in Springfield.
Yeah.
Would you like to go into that, or?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so
retired pastor, you've
Yeah,
given,
yeah,
you've helped people. You've helped people
Yeah.
reflect about their faith and their journey,
yeah.
and that's a powerful thing.
And the church has like 40-year history, and it began in 1980, but and really, it's a part of the whole Asian American journey, which a lot of people don't know about. There's a lot of rich, and I tell the people that I know in church and in the in the community in general, that once you look into the Asian American presence here and understand where we came from and where we are now, it's amazing. It's amazing. So the church was started, a lot of Chinese churches in this country began with, English-speaking churches, white churches sponsoring like a Bible study in Chinese in their facility. So they would allow us to have a room or space, usually on Friday nights. Okay, and that's how this church started. But it was started by, at that time in the 1980s, the students were from Hong Kong. They spoke Cantonese.
Yeah.
All right. And so it was a Bible study. At that time, even meeting at the same place that later, when it became a church, it met at the Emerald Baptist Church on 19th and Patterson in Eugene. And so these Cantonese-speaking students from Hong Kong, and at that time there were refugees coming in, Southeast Asian refugees. But and people don't realize that a lot of the Vietnamese that came, they have Chinese heritage. When they were living in Vietnam, right? So a lot of the restaurants here, or Asian markets, they may, have Vietnamese surnames, but they also could speak Chinese, many of them. Yeah, because back in what used to be called Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City, there's a district there, Chonong district, all Chinese business people, shops. So a lot of them, when they come here, and so these Hong Kong students, wanted to help these refugees coming in. And so they began to reach out to them. And that was part of the impetus for establishing, the Chinese church, at that time. And so there's, on our wall here in the church, there's a whole history, which I helped to, actually before, memories of what happened was kind of in bits and pieces. So one of the things, and like you, I enjoy history.
Yeah.
So I began to actually, write down, what I know, and then Teresa, one of our, wonderful, ladies in the church, finished it when I retired, and so we got 40 years of history on this, on the wall here. So now when, as I said before, after our stint in Idaho Falls, we chose, our family actually chose to come to Eugene, and of course there's only one Chinese church in Eugene.
Yeah.
So actually, I
I always have to imagine it's tough if you sour a relationship with somebody, in situations like that. Or, I mean, churches are very friendly. They're full of people that are gregarious and easy to get along with. But it is kind of challenging when your culture and your community only has one place to go in the place that you live.
Okay, Tom, let me correct you on that a little bit.
Okay, feel free.
How should I put it? Again, this is my Asian American experience, but also perhaps that of many people like Amy. Because I came here as a 12-year-old. So I learned. I mean, I took English classes, in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So my grammar was always good. Coming here, it didn't take me too long to become very proficient in English. Growing up in Seattle.
Yeah.
So English became my first language.
Yeah.
And then Cantonese was my second language. That's my heart language. And then I did not...
Heart language. I like that term.
Yeah. I mean, Cantonese, when I hear my mom speak Cantonese, she's passed now, but when I hear people who... a native Cantonese speaker, there's still, I get emotional sometimes.
Feels like home. Feels like youth.
Yeah. But growing up, it was funny. At home in Seattle, my mom and dad would speak to me in Cantonese, but I always would respond in English. So
That's how it was in my household. My mom wanted me to speak Japanese. I was listening to her, but responding in English.
And I didn't get it back until I became an adult and on my own, and it never went away. Thank God.
Wonderful.
But so in Idaho Falls there were no Chinese churches, so we went to an English-speaking church. Actually, I became vice chairman of the church for whatever reason, but my wife and I did start a Chinese Bible study. The first one that's still going, I mean 20, 30 years ago. But so coming to Eugene, my wife and I actually visited some English-speaking churches, and attended a few worship services. But because for me it would be so much easier, to communicate in English like I'm doing with you, right?
Yeah.
But then for whatever reason, we decided really, deep down we want to be with a group of, Chinese people. And I began to learn to speak Mandarin Chinese, my third language, after becoming a Christian in Portland.
A lot of people in the stories you've told me have been trilingual.
Yeah, my first job in church after I became a Christian, a believer, was to be my pastor's interpreter. He calls me the interrupter.
Hilarious. Renegade interpreter.
So that's how I learned Mandarin Chinese. Even my wife Irene grew up in Taiwan, and she was also born in Guangzhou, China. So native Cantonese speaker. So at home we never spoke Mandarin Chinese. Always spoke Cantonese or English. But because of our involvement in the Chinese church, at that time the only Mandarin-speaking Chinese church of maybe a dozen churches. At the time, Chinese churches in Portland for some, whatever reason, So when we came here, actually, I said, I've been used to going to an, English-speaking church in Idaho. Coming here, so much easier, and frankly, I want to maybe have an easier life. No responsibilities, but somehow, God ordained that. We come to the Eugene Chinese Church. So
God may have ordained that cell phone that we might have heard on the microphone, but it's good because this is a historical document, so people can remember that's the classic ringtone from that era.
And then so we became members of the church and starting to serve in the church in various capacities for about 10 years. And then within those 10 years, the church went through a transition of like, I think 4 different pastors. So when it come to about 2000, when the, pastor left about 2005, 2006, I was approached by church leaders, so Ricky, have you considered, becoming a pastor of this church? And I said, well, why? Because at that time I would say I would be the last person because of my background to be pastoring a Chinese church. But,
Wow.
But it turned out it's kind of a very critical turning point, for a whole family.
Yeah. When I think about pastors and the work they do, they have this text to choose what they're going to emphasize or highlight or excerpt each Sunday, each week.
Yeah.
What values from the Bible do you think maybe were your bread and butter, or were you, when you were preaching, what kinds of values? It could be stories, but it could be values, whether it's compassion, selflessness, sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, if I were to choose just one word, it would be grace. And I think I always, look at the people that whether it's in this congregation or even my family. Our oldest grandkid is named Grace. Okay. And when I see her, I always say, you are the visible grace of God. And it's that sense of, being thankful. I know, life is full of trials and difficulties. But I think when we think of, how God had put us, into this situation for His purpose, and how, I always encourage, church members to be giving. There's a artwork by our resident artist Dan Chan. One day he came to me and said, Pastor, the word, in Chinese for love, I'm thinking of doing a art piece, central, and focus on that word. But can you help me to find translations as many languages as you can of the word love? So I did that. So you'll see, this.
Well, is one of those where it's the Japanese word too, and I'm sure it comes from the origin there. We say aishiteru. If you love somebody, aishiteru.
Yeah, getting back to you, and that's an excellent question. So the love that is on display there in this artwork is what I would call the godly or the sacrificial kind of love, or is putting others' needs before ours, and we could do that because of grace of God. So that's simple as that. That's kind of my, what I try to model that way of living. I think, I'm so grateful for you, Tom.
Oh.
No, really. I think, the first time I met you, I said, Tom could be a good friend, right?
It's only our second time together. We're already there, man. Yeah, I would love to continue to be in touch.
Yeah, and so I'm doing this, hopefully, not because I feel I deserve to be interviewed. Even though Amy, thought I am worthy of this honor, right?
Already, I can totally see why. You have humor. No. You have stories. You're willing to talk. It's great.
But I'm just hoping, whatever I say, or will, provide some encouragement,
Mm-hmm.
to people, even with totally different backgrounds,
That's a great
right?
sort of lead into one thing I was thinking about so many of the churches that I've seen in my life, and I've been a little bit in and out of some. I didn't grow up in a particularly organized faith family, but one thing that I've seen is so many of them are involved in the community in service, acts of service that do touch far beyond practitioners in that observers, worshipers of that own church, and throughout the neighborhood, throughout the community. Just today, I came in and somebody had left a piece of furniture in the parking lot
Right.
because they believed that this was like a Salvation Army or somewhere that would take it. And
Yeah.
I was told it wasn't the first time.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
yeah, I think that's an excellent way,
Service. What's the church doing in the community, or
Okay.
has been, that you would like to spotlight?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think when I was pastoring, I don't know if we're still doing that. There's a network of churches in the Lane County area called One Hope. So they do a couple of things every year. So we were kind of involved in that. One is to, at the beginning of the school year or just before, to have something called Project Hope, to give out free school supplies, brand new shoes, to children of families who cannot maybe have the financial resources to do that. So, but the key there is not so much just giving out the stuff, but I think the key, as always, Tom, is the relationship that came about. So this project basically enabled these churches who came together for the good of the community to establish excellent relationship with the 4J or Bethel,
I see.
or Junction City, Springfield school districts. So we have a kind of a credibility, I guess, that indeed we are people who live the way, we talk, right? I mean, that's important, right? You could, so, I mean, it's basically...
And relationships, deeper relationships among the churches, interfaith, between different...
And and I always emphasize the generational aspects, being Asian American, that connection between generations is very important, right? And so this, helping the young school kids this way. The other one is every Thanksgiving or thereabouts, we have a free boxes of all the turkey and all the fixings, they call it.
Yeah.
And so the churches, individuals will donate to buy these, and people would put it together, and church people would distribute those. So my wife and I have done that when we were pastoring. But even more recently, our church decided to begin or revive a service to the seniors, the elderly. So we had a kickoff luncheon. The purpose is to allow the seniors, a lot of them would be Asian Americans or Chinese Americans, to give them opportunities to build friendships. Not only that, but to learn.
Yeah.
So we had a kickoff luncheon. About 40 people came. So this will be something we'll continue to do. It could be just getting together and doing excursions or field trips. In fact, one coming up, I have a connection with the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, and now I have a connection with the Springfield History Museum. Maybe doing a tour there, with the group. Or we could go to wildlife safari. I don't know, because these elderly Chinese people, they came from a totally. They come mainly because their children are here, and they come to maybe help out with the with the caring of the grandchildren. They are not all that fluent in English, and transportation is a problem. So that I think that's something that our church is hoping to be of some help. Again, it's the building of relationships that really is the key here. So so there.
Given all of these wonderful things that the church has done, I also just can't help but ask. This sounds like it's a negative, but I think it is the opportunity to discuss something positive, which is people have conceptions, and often they have misconceptions from just not knowing. Well, maybe they're a Christian, but they're not Chinese. Maybe they don't have that background at all, or they Chinese, but they don't understand the faith aspect of it. Or do you feel that people have misconceptions sometimes about the church or the community that you've discovered, or has that not been the case?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a tough question.
Yeah,
because
or maybe even stereotypes that people have.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with maybe in terms of relationships, the danger of stereotyping. I don't care who. So I mean, you may have some preconceptions of who I am, and I may have some of who you are. But until we sit down like this,
Yes,
and be open to having a dialogue, learn about the other person, and learn to listen. There's people need to maybe practice more. There's in the New Testament, there's in the book of James about slow to speak, slow to anger, but quick to listen.
amazing.
And I think that's what we need to do more and more nowadays. Instead of jumping to conclusions or based on what we heard from others, come and learn about, and reach out. It takes a little bit of, I don't know if it's willingness to be vulnerable, I suppose. I am not without faults, I could tell you that. All right? I am by no means perfect, but I just enjoy even now, being with you, Tom, and just having this, this is to me, a very relaxing,
Good.
productive dialogue, right?
How can I make it really tense? That's excellent.
Do you?
That's
I
good.
don't know, and I don't
It's
want.
clear that you have energy to share about this space and about your story.
Yeah, so I've started to write down. There's a guy named Ron Chu, and he was the former director of the Wing Luke Museum in Seattle.
Amy's nodding off camera.
Yeah, and he wrote a memoir, and it's called The Unforgotten Seattle. And I got to know him, and he went to the same university I did. He went to the same high school I did in Seattle. So because of his example, I started to write down my story a little bit. I'm only up to high school.
Cool. Oh wow, that's excellent.
No, but I figure for my children and grandchildren, they know pretty much the way I am. Because certainly our children, son and daughter, but they don't know very much about who I was before they knew me.
Or what shaped you to become who you are, really, those early.
Yeah, and I think so. It's so wonderful that the Springfield History Museum is doing illumination.
Yes.
You have no idea.
We want to thank Mindy Linder and Maddie McGraw for helping to put this spotlight on this exhibit.
Oh, I would say, as a pastor, as an answer to prayer. Okay. I mean, you know, so,
Lovely.
and I don't know if you want to.
Well, since you've been writing though, and that
Yeah.
you've been revisiting your childhood right
Wow.
after high school,
Yeah.
probably some embarrassing stuff in there. Do you want to like a moment or anything? I can't help but ask. The classic like, tell me about a moment where you
Yeah,
were embarrassed
yeah.
or something
Oh, wow. Wow.
that you're willing to share.
No,
I mean,
and
I'm just
now I
prodding.
don't know how much time you got, but
We've got time.
I do want to reserve some time to explain the origin of the Chinese name of this church current. Okay, so
Okay.
put that in the parking lot
Good.
somewhere in your thinking.
Put a
But
pin in it.
yeah, no, it's how should I say? The one I came from actually a dysfunctional family. People may not know that, but I'm more free. The Chinese has the old saying. I mean, all the bad things about your family you should not share, right?
Hmm.
Right, because it shames the family, and then that's very important. In our culture, you don't want to shame your family, but I mentioned I came as a 12-year-old, so it was my parents actually at the prime of their lives. They could have done pretty successfully back in Hong Kong, have a good life there. But again, as you know, for the sake of the children, they felt an opportunity to be coming here would be good, for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it turned out that way.
Yeah.
But coming over here and got to Seattle. Our first home was not a house. It was a converted storage space.
Wow.
In Seattle, in the International District in Chinatown, where
Converted by your own.
no, it was
Okay,
there.
it had
It was
already.
there. Yeah.
Are we talking about water and
Yeah.
plumbing
You
and all
go in
that's there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's,
I was wondering.
hardly any windows.
Yeah. Very humble.
But the address was on Maynard Alley, which is one of only two alleys at that time in Seattle which had names. And guess
Wow.
what the other one is?
Poon.
No, Canton
Oh wow.
Alley. Canton was the name of Guangzhou, my birthplace.
Yes, before you moved to Hong Kong.
You're telling me, so I mean,
Yeah.
I look back and that's how I connect my dots. I don't know how you
Wow.
connect your dots. I connect my dots by looking back. And everything seemed to just fit. But it was shortly after the family arrived that my mom found out from my dad's mom, her mother-in-law, that, my dad actually took a second wife.
Oh wow.
Well, imagine, finding out about that, just first, I mean, getting off the boat, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
So that's how I, that's the condition
So
I
he
grew up
kind of
with.
was leading to.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Sort
there was,
of.
yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, just
Two timing.
Yeah, very,
Wow.
the family's conflicted, the four children, the siblings grew up, in the midst of a lot of argument between mom and dad, and all that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at that again, it's grace of God that I turned out the way I am. Really, I mean, it could have been, my life story could have been a lot different. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is, even that experience, as painful as it was, today I felt there was a purpose purpose in it because now I could help others who, and that's part of the reason.
No doubt.
I think I became a pastor because if I didn't have that experience, I would not be as, how would I say, compassionate or understanding, of that particular. I mean, being immersed into a totally, Western culture, and then this is the first experience you have within the family. I mean, the chances of failure, as a person. And I always tell, I mean, we have a lot of young college students that came to our church, and I mean, what I desire of them is really, you may value yourself in terms of your performance, but let me tell you, it's your character. It's your character, that really counts at the end, right? I mean, and not performance. Your true value, is based on your character.
I like that you use the word performance in what you're describing, because I think it has two fundamental different kinds of meanings. One is just competence, right, is performance, but also artifice is performance too.
Yeah.
I'm performing on stage, I'm acting.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say there's no value in those things. Those are certainly important.
Yeah.
But if they come at the expense of character,
exactly. Yep.
People won't trust you. People won't. You can't form alliances. You can't do as much. With that competence.
Yeah, I think you framed that perfectly, Tom. No, I mean I had a very successful engineering career. And I could have retired as an engineer, but somehow, God had some other purpose, in my life, but I feel, it's when there's the old saying, it's more blessed, to give than to receive. Imagine that being kind of the mantra. How often do you hear that anymore, right?
Very Christ-like idea.
But in my life, it's been true. It's in my life, it's been true. I really felt blessed, to even as I give a little bit of myself, into this project, but what I've received so far, having to just go back and search again, going back to my own history, and hopefully again, what I have to share here will help others.
It already has, and it will. And you have seen the evolution of the Asian American community, AAPI community in this region. And so I'm curious, as one of the last questions, unless you have more to get to besides the name, which I know you want to get to.
Okay.
The future of the Asian American community in Springfield and Eugene. What do you think it looks like? What do you think it looks like?
Well, again, from my perspective, and I have to admit, maybe I'm not the kind of Asian American, that people think about, because I have I'm privileged, right? Because I have no difficulty communicating with you.
Okay.
In English.
Yes. Yeah, I think 9 out of 10 white Springfielders on the street would see you and not think that you could carry on the kind of English conversation that you would do.
If I have a desire, is that people who may not be as fluent in English as I am, or who may have come maybe, at a later age in life, and those are the people that I think could really make a contribution to Springfield, where we are. I have not thought out
Sure.
how that could be done yet.
Yes.
But it's I think
It was a pretty large visionary question I was
well,
asking.
I know, but it's got well, Tom, it's got to be beyond culture. I'm not against being proud of where you're from, your culture, but I'm even more excited about people of different culture coming together and understanding each other.
Yeah.
As just basically human beings, beyond the differences, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of talk about,
There's so much division.
yeah, it's diversity should not be division, right? It's the whole concept of unity in diversity, and I think the Asian American population, because of who we are and where we came from, I see the Asian, and I hope I don't sound too grandiose. Okay, I don't mean to say we're somehow better than anyone, but I think, and you may or may not agree with me, that Asian Americans, because of who we are and where we came from, can serve as that bridge.
I see.
Okay, that bridge to bring people that may be,
Yeah.
different than us together.
Yeah.
It's just because.
And I think
where
you're
we are.
certainly saying it's not about telling other racial groups, other cultures and things to have to be a certain way,
Yeah.
but you're saying that the way that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you talk about the history of how this Asian experience or identity or Asian American, all these things have come about is because we've had to reckon with our own Asian strife in some ways. When we're here, we have to reckon with the history that's come from, I mean, Japan, Guangzhou, Hong Kong.
Yeah. You and I are Asian Americans, but I could tell you, Tom, you and I are not. That's a danger when people say Asian American. They don't realize that within that group, whether it's designated by the government or whatever else, how you designate these things. That within that, there's
Constructed ideas.
even within that, there's a lot of diversity. Even within that, I mean, your experience is, maybe different than mine, but it just happens that my dad was born in Nagasaki. So that's how he learned to speak Japanese. He never taught me, but so when I heard of your background, I said, "Well, okay, I have a little bit of you."
This is the thing. I am being asked to be an interviewer. You've done more research on me than I've done on you.
No, I haven't. No, that's not true. That's not true.
It's likely true, but we'll just move through it. You wanted to tell me about the significance of the name of the church.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's see. Okay, so when the church was, established, it had but the Chinese name for Eugene is Yujin. All right. I don't know if you know. There's a big city in China called Tianjin. Tian means heaven. Jin is a word that means abundance. In fact, overflowing abundance. Okay. And so there's Tianjin, heavenly abundance. And then when whoever came up with the Chinese name for Eugene, they decided to use Eugene. Yu means rain. But it's a good kind of rain. rain that brings abundance,
Oh, yes.
right, of fruit and crops, and
Right.
So Eugene,
Can I tell you
yeah,
that one of the churches I grew up in, it had kind of a central passage that was like kind of the main passage that the pastor talked about a lot. I believe it's John 10:10, but I
okay.
know that it was
Oh, yeah,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah,
abundant.
yeah,
It said
yeah.
the thief comes to lie and destroy,
Oh, wow.
and then but I have come that they may have
Life.
life in abundance.
Yep.
So, and
Wow. Thank you, Tom.
well, that's just the fact that you use that word abundance.
That's exactly,
Mm-hmm.
the Gospel of John happens to be my favorite book in the New Testament. So there you go.
Right.
So Eugene, of course, Eugenian is Eugene, an English name
Yes.
is,
Comes from Eugene Skinner.
but it's based on Greek. Eugene in Greek means well-born.
Right.
Of course, sometimes it's used in a bad way.
Yes.
Eugenics.
Yes. Yes.
So the Chinese name. So when the Chinese convert American city names or Western city names to Chinese from English, they do it either two ways. If it could be translated literally, they do that. But most of the time, it's phonetics. So that's why Eugene. Right. So. So that's been the name of the church for a long time, and when I became pastor, there was a Chinese song, a hymn, that seemed to be always in my mind, and then that song has to do with I have to kind of think of it in the Chinese and then
No problem.
translate it for you. Okay.
Yes.
In Mandarin Chinese, it's 主 the Lord, 赐福, giving of blessings. 如春雨, it's like the spring rain. So when I became the pastor, I kind of made that the the theme song of the church, because it, the God's blessing coming down like
Yes.
spring rain seemed to just fit the so since the mid '90s, and our wife and my wife and I became members of the church, and all those years, then became pastor. After I retired from engineering, we were originally was at a location. I think the Southern Baptist has a building on either 24th or 25th and Harris near campus. So we met there for a while, and then later we decided to move it to Emerald Baptist Church on 19th and Patterson. So that throughout my tenure as pastor, that's where we were. And as I mentioned before, we were hoping to maybe someday purchase that property because it was close to school. We have a lot of students coming in. It's convenient. It's centrally located and all that. But never.
But then we probably wouldn't be doing this interview.
Well, I'll tell you, Tom.
If it stayed in Eugene.
I'll tell you, Tom. So I retired in 2016 on good terms. All right. So I'm now kind of, if they have questions of me, they want to consult with, I give them my suggestion.
Yes, yes.
But we're still very much, connected to the people of the church. And it was sometime back in just before the pandemic, I believe, COVID-19. Out of the blue, my wife and I learned, and Ada Lee, our good friend, a Chinese community, elder, respected elder, mentioned about this place in Springfield, being available. It was a Salvation Army depot or chapel. And so the church, people found out about it, and they came and took a look at it, and made an offer for it. Okay. I mean, if you see it, I mean, it was not. I mean, when Brother Steve said, I'm the person that know
Yes,
the
when I
least
came
about,
in, he made a point to say that you're the person who knows the least about this building.
and only now, Tom, my friend,
That's right.
you interviewing me here. I'm looking up at the lighting, the sound system, which you know a little bit about. Only now do I realize how much our little church. I mean, you're talking about no more than maybe 60 to 80 on a good day.
Sure. Congregation.
I looked at it and I said, I marvel at what has actually been. See, when I come here now, once in a while, as a guest speaker,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what I'm going to do up there on the pulpit. I don't. But now because of this interview,
Right. It's different when you.
and so when we had our 40th. And then COVID happened. So then we went online. Okay. So we actually had our 40th anniversary celebration. That would be 2020, right? Yeah. Online. And they invited me to be a speaker. And I spoke on the grace of God, naturally. And then it was about that time that, someone, although I might have hinted at it in the past, but now that we are located in Springfield, it should not be just Eugene Chinese Christian Church anymore, right?
Yes.
Springfield has to be in there because we are now part of your community, okay? This is our community. And so it was almost like a consensus of everyone that we should change the name to instead of Eugene, Chinese Christian Church, it's now Chunyu. The Yu, the rain is still there. The Chun, okay. The name Springfield.
Yes.
In Chinese, literally means Chun Tian. That's how Chun means spring. Tian means field. Okay. So Chun Tian is the official Chinese name for good old Springfield.
I see.
So what we did was to take the first.
Probably true for all the Springfields in the U.S., maybe? Or you don't?
Yeah, because if you use phonetic Springfield, it doesn't come out as good as Eugene. Eugene is now not Eugene anymore. It's Eugene. If you talk to someone from mainland China, or you talk to people who are coming here for the Olympic trials, so which is they would not use Eugene. This is the old Chinese name for this town across the freeway. But so we decided to use the first character from the Chinese name for Springfield, Chun, which means spring, and use the first character from the Chinese name for Eugene, which means rain. So we became the Chun Yu Chinese Christian Church, which means the Church of the Spring Rain.
That's amazing.
Blessing of God.
Yeah.
In abundance, as you so ably quoted from John 10.
I love that decision was made in a somewhat of a collective way.
There was no doubt.
Yes.
There was no doubt that this would be the name here. And notice that Chun came before you. Springfield came before in Chinese.
Yeah.
Which rightfully should be so. That's only fair. Because in English, it's what? Eugene, Springfield.
Yeah.
But those of us who don't know, you had your first Chinese lesson. If you have to translate it, it's Springfield,
The
Eugene.
pop quiz will be off camera.
Springfield, Eugene Chinese Christian Church.
Wow.
So And I tell you, Tom and Amy sitting there, what can I say? This
Well,
cannot be random.
I can say thank you.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not random.
I can only say thank you. And I can say that as I'm doing my personal podcast, which is a very similar thing, shameless plug, it's called Broken Class with Thomas Yuta. It's on YouTube and all the audio platform services. Would love to dive into so much more with you. It's just really enjoyable. Like you complimented me like a zillion times. You can't also accept when I say that. I just very much enjoy it.
I tell you, okay, after my interview, I got another appointment at night. The first Chinese couple that I married here, the husband's from Shanghai, the wife is from Taiwan. They and my wife and I are going on a double date at an Italian restaurant, Massey's.
Yes. I like the big meatball. If you get spaghetti and meatball.
So again, people like you and Amy and and me, we are to be the bridges. I've been to Shanghai, I've been to Taiwan, and here I am in the little town of Springfield.
Yeah.
But not at all little in my heart, in my mind.
No doubt.
If I would have to say, it's a small town with a big heart. How's that for a motto?
Yes.
Small town with a big heart.
Yes.
How's that?
I love the relationship. We've kind of gone at it in some ways and maybe joking and disparaging, but Eugene depends on Springfield, and Springfield depends on Eugene.
Either city would be the same without the other.
Not at all. Not
right?
at all.
So I-5 is an artificial barrier,
frankly,
right?
So many people in Eugene need cars to get around, and so much of Eugene has auto shops and mechanics
that's where my mechanic is located.
Yes,
my body shop.
If Springfield, every business shut down, Eugene wouldn't know what to do.
And you have to go through Springfield to one of my favorite spots, McKinsey Bridge and beyond, right?
Mm-hmm. So many things, so many lovely things.
No. So we should. I'm only connected with Springfield in maybe a peripheral way, but now that the church is located here, that's a hope that we will be a blessing to this community in some way. I don't know what it is yet, but I believe it will be.
It's right here on Mill and Centennial. Easy to find.
Yep.
What's the address?
Yep.
One something.
I don't know.
All right.
I think it's 1020. I think it's 1027 Mill Street.
Sounds right. I don't remember numbers these days.
And
everything's on here.
It's where Martin Luther King turns into Centennial.
Yes.
I got a story about that too.
Oh, I remember it when that happened as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that much about what occurred, except that it was something Eugene wanted to do. I thought it sounded great. And then the thing I heard was that, anytime you change a road, there's a lot of costs that are involved. Yeah. And so Springfield maybe didn't want to move forward with it in the same way.
Yeah, I think...
because Centennial, for anyone young, they might not know, MLK past Autzen and everything used to be all just called Centennial.
Yeah, and that's Glenwood, which is another animal. But it's this love of history, something that you and I share in common. But it's more than just reminiscing, right? You know your way ahead by looking back, basically. And then you always, as I say, you always live in the present.
Yeah.
But you're always constantly looking back and looking forward. But you live in the present. So I'm philosophizing, preaching again.
Well, it's good.
As usual.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And unless you have anything else
you
think we should get into, I'll say that I really have appreciated you all at home as well, and anybody checking it out at the museum itself, the Springfield History Museum on Main Street. Yeah. This conversation has been a part of the Illumination series, and we look forward to seeing you for the next one.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah.